In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Please note the explicit content indicator. This means that I use adult language. I do not speak in a humorless, public radio hushed monotone. I am excited and enthusiastic about the information that I present and the topics I discuss. You will hear ice rattle in my glass throughout the show. On the show, I joke about bodily functions, sex acts, religion, and politics. The topics may seem random or scattered through the back catalog. A list of show topics in chronological order is provided on the featured topic link at Advertise.com. If any of these issues might trigger you, this might not be the podcast for you, and I wish you good luck finding a show more to your liking. It's that time again. The music is low. The party is over. The fire is dying down, and all the ordinary people passed out long ago. Now we are the only ones left. Okay, hey everybody, this is John. Not to take too much time here. Just wanted to say that if you're a Patreon or Subscribe Star supporter, in the Knight of the Vessel of the Art tier, one of the many things that you get is you get a monthly phone call with me. So since I just started rolling these things out, I've been recording them, and this is the second episode like this. So Ryan's was the first, and it was last Friday. So this is a chat with a guy named Matt. The only reason I bring this up is because it's not a usual episode. What you're listening to is a conversation of two guys getting to know each other and talking about stuff that they like. This is why I'm doing it on Friday, because you had already two shows of what you came here for. This is just kind of like a bonus thing. And it's a way to just get to know my supporters and get to listen to us talk about stuff that's not, philosophy or Freemasonry or wizards or, whatever. So I have fun doing these things. I love doing them. And I hope you guys enjoy the conversation as well. So without any further ado, if you're playing along at home, go ahead and summon that vessel of the art and raise it high. And this is a thank you to my Patreon and Subscribe Star supporters. May you be in heaven half an hour before the devil knows that you're dead. Hear, hear. So we have two infographics this month. If you sign into the mailing list or the Fulgor Correspondentia, one is a brief timeline of Genesis, according to me. It's very fun, very interesting. The other is we're tracking the wrong son, wrong blessing / curse / magic underpants. You're going to hear me talk a little bit about this with Matt. And you also get to check the tarot cards that I'm designing. And I'm fucking forgetting something. The Fellowcraft episode, the Patreon and Subscribe Star exclusive episode. It's called the Fellowcraft episode. It is, what's it about this month? Whoa. Wow. It's we're starting to look at and dissect the work of Milton William Cooper in an episode called The UFO Conspiracy Part 1. So without further ado, let's do this.
This call is being recorded.
All right, there we go. Okay, Matt, how's it going, buddy?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hey, were you raised like in a religious sort of like a childhood or what?
Actually, like pretty much from a young age up through high school. Yeah, I started out. My family was in the Salvation Army when I was adolescent, and then from there, I went to like a Christian, I guess you could consider it like a primary school, and then a Catholic high school.
Okay, so the Christian primary school wasn't necessarily Catholic. It was like a
it was just like run of the mill Christian. There was no real denomination to it.
Okay, and then so you kind of graduated to Catholicism.
Kinda. It was just all my friends from that school went to this Catholic school rather than going to public schools. So it was kind of just okay, you'll follow them, but.
Yeah,
I was never really raised Catholic.
Okay, yeah. So, my stepmom, they go to like this weird Catholic church that's like they don't stick to like all the rules and stuff, and it's kind of like a voodoo Catholic kind of thing. It's really, really.
That
bizarre.
sounds like fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's like real. It's like they're allowed to have like female deacons and priests and stuff, and it's always just like a fucking wild scene going there.
So they're going like they're like a flower child hippie kind of Catholic thing.
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. It's like they keep some of the like the ritual and stuff, but then they just like change a bunch of other things. I don't think they fall into like a official diocese. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so it was always really weird going there.
It was interesting going to like from being like in a Christian environment and then kind of like abruptly thrown into Catholicism. I raged against it a lot. I mean, it was also a part of me being like teenager, like already pissed off about everything as it was. But
yeah. So it's so weird because even though they're both technically like Christian faiths, like they're totally different from one another. Mm-hmm. Like my mom was a Southern Baptist and my dad was a Catholic. So I got like the hellfire and the brimstone and then like all the righteous indignation. Like just
that's an interesting combination. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It was really wild. So is that how you found the show? Your interest in religion?
Honestly, the way I found the show initially, I was looking into, learning more about the Crusades, and like everywhere I looked, everything seemed to have like an agenda to it or a bias to it. I was like, I just want to know, like, I want to listen to like watch a documentary, or like like find something on Spotify that just talks about like the history of the Crusades, and that's initially how I found your podcast, and from there it was just like I just dove into like all the subjects.
Yeah, that's something that that I point out a lot on my Crusades episodes is the weird historical bias that's that's leveled at those events, and it's so weird, like how they just give the Muslim side like all these passes, like they just ignore like just crazy wild things. And instead of being like, that guy was an awful fucking general, they're like, well, he just made bad decisions because he didn't have the right intelligence. And you're like, what? That makes him a bad general.
No, they were all pretty shitty for the most part. But yeah, no, I agree. It was very one-sided, and that's what kind of like pushed me to really research and try to find something that would just like tell it like it is, as far as just basic facts of what had happened. My favorite thing was the whole, like, I feel like the epic tale between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin. That story, the story of them going at it, just is like, to me, is one of the most fascinating things. The fact that Like, if one of them had waited a little bit longer than the other, what would have happened?
Yeah, yeah, it's wild because the Europeans had to play like this logistics game. And I mean, that's a huge amount of distance when you're talking about fucking horses and stuff. So I think that really played into a lot of that. But even when you mention like Saladin, we're gonna this year we are gonna be doing the Second Crusade, so we're gonna get into some of that stuff.
Awesome!
But but the bias doesn't stop at the history books. Like, you know, you go watch a movie like Kingdom of Heaven or whatever it's called with that kid that played Leogas Greengrass. You know which one I'm talking about? It's
yeah, I know what I'm talking about. The
yeah,
I can't remember its name.
I think it's called Kingdom of Heaven or Kingdom of God or something like that. But yeah, like you look at that and like Ridley Scott is just totally lying about like all of that. Like the characters are all backwards and it's just crazy. But yeah, we're going to be getting into that this year.
I'm excited for it because that's like I just love that whole story, that whole genre. It just seems like, I mean, like it's weird to see how the bias nowadays, and I don't know if it's just the fear of, I mean, because it's like talking bad about one side and the consequences of it, or if it's just like a mainstream like Hollywood media kind of thing, or what.
I don't know, man. It's hard to tell. It really is. But yeah, so when we did the first Crusades, I kind of stopped at the creation of the Templars, and I went and I found like their old, like their charter or their canon, and I was like reading these funny rules that they had. Like they couldn't shave their beard, but they had to shave their head. And I thought that was really weird. And there was just like a bunch of like odd kind of rules that they had to follow.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting a look at that. I'm sure it's pretty just oddball kind of requests and demands and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's funny because you put yourself in the context, and you're like, okay, well, what's the practical reason for this? And it's just like, I have no idea. You know, it's just like,
yeah, other than just like a form of control or something like that.
Yeah, it's like how they like, it's like the French Foreign Legion or something. You know, like those guys just like live their life, and if they just fuck one thing up, they wind up going to jail for a week or something. It's kind of like like that. I think, I don't know. It's really bizarre. But then you read like the historical accounts, and they're like one Templar was worth like 20 regular knights and like 200 regular soldiers, and you're just like, oh my, you know, the hair on your arm stands up, and you're just like, badasses, you know.
Yeah, like the reincarnation of like the 300 like Spartans, just like that warrior kind of race.
Yeah, but yeah, totally what you said about like the control and stuff, because those guys were just reported to one fucking person, the Pope, you know, and you know, so you imagine that they're like, well, we got to make sure everybody stays under control because we don't want to lose this sweet deal that we have, you know.
Well, yeah, you have so many people that are joining. I mean, the amount of people that are joining up and coming into the area throughout the centuries, and it would be like there's no other way you could do it. Like you'd have to kind of keep everybody on the straight and narrow as far as like the agenda.
And the whole thing, like about how they became the first international bankers, I thought that was really fascinating.
You see, I didn't know that initially, and then yeah, and I was like, that's the crazy, and like just like certain things about like the I guess I don't know if you call it the lore or the mystery behind the Templar and whatnot. I was like, well, there you go. I can see where that kind of story gets started. Like, obviously, if they have that kind of like financial pull.
Yeah, and it's just like because it was because of their logistics problems. There's no way that they could have enough soldiers to guard the whole road. So they're just like, fine, these guys aren't going to be traveling with a bunch of money. We're going to give them like fucking traveler's checks. And then when they get to the next, you know, Templar tower or whatever, they could just get more money, and they change the little secret code on their traveler check. So the next fucking guy, the next banker knows how much money they have in their account. And it's just like, whoa, you know, it's amazing.
Yeah, and see, it makes me wonder whether or not they it was the initial plan was for that practical purpose, or if it was like we can really monopolize this entire venture.
Yeah, for sure, because the motherfuckers are charging interest.
Oh, absolutely.
And then and then the other wild thing is like, well, you're just like, okay, well, they're red crosses on white backgrounds, and like we see that in like this in the Swiss, and they're famous for their banking, and you're just like, is that where that fucking came from? Like, is that where the Swiss
exactly like
came from?
It all comes together. They got their own little city, their own little like sovereign nation over there.
Yeah, it's wild. So are those the episodes that you like the most, or like the historical ones?
I like the ones about the Bible, like the Genesis ones have been really interesting, because I mean, the way I was raised, you only hear it from a certain standpoint, and for the most part, you only really get like the greatest hits, or the quick like the more popular verses. And I mean, in all honesty, I mean, I never really read the Bible when I was a kid anyway. It's just you kind of take what people are saying, as what for what it is, and I'm a kid being raised like, in this type of environment. So, growing up and then kind of like getting thrown into like the Catholicism and like clashing with that, and then moving on like out of high school from that, and then kind of really looking into, Christianity. And like, I don't know, for me, I'm not sure, honestly, if I would even consider myself Christian anymore. I mean, I feel like it helped give me a good moral compass, if anything. Like, it's a good book for that, but I think clashing with like in that high school over Catholicism and just general just life experiences from that point on kind of shape my viewpoint.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case for most people. Like, I read this book one time. It was called "The Future of Belief." I can't remember who wrote it, but he makes a strong point, like at the beginning of the book, where he goes, "The majority." I don't know if he's talking about Americans, but I'll just limit it to that. He's paraphrasing. He says something like, "The majority of Americans don't really believe in God. They believe in God." They just stick to this like Sunday ritual. Like, they go to the church, and then they go to fucking Eaton Park or whatever, and then they go home and mow the lawn or do whatever. And it just becomes like a thing,
Yeah,
like,
and that's exactly it. It's you hit it right on the head, like ritual. Like, that's all it is. I mean, that's what your parents did. That's what their parents did. That's what their parents did. So that's what I'm going to do, and then it just becomes something you always do. And whether it's one of those like you only show up on Easter and Christmas, or you show up every Sunday, and I would venture to say that a lot of people are probably like that. Like, if you were to really question what they think, it would be, I believe it because it is. I believe it because my parents believe it.
Yeah, or it's just like out of convenience, because thinking about any of the alternatives are terrifying.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where you are now. Like, you're out of any of the churches and stuff.
Yeah, I honestly haven't been to church in 32 now. I used to go when my grandmother was still alive. I would go with her that was her thing, and I would always go just as just to be with my grandmother. So, when she passed away, it was just kind of like, I think all of us in the family were just kind of like, well, that's done.
Like, well, there's no really reason to do that anymore. So
yeah, like that was the last time we had to going to church, was whenever she would ask, like, yes, Grandma, we'll go.
So when I was like young, like middle school age, and I would go to church with my mom, I would go because of the social structure. Like, the Sunday school class kids were like my friends, so I would go there. And I guess I really didn't listen too much, about all that stuff, because, secretly I'm like trying to, finger fuck, the girl sitting in the pew with me or something,
I hear that.
Yeah. Be like, oh man. Southern Baptist chicks are freaky. You know,
That was the motivation for me for a lot of youth group meetings in like middle school and high school.
Yeah. So, but it's funny because it's like, it's obviously like it touched me. You know what I mean? Like, obviously something happened because I'm like obsessed with this stuff now, you know?
Well, it's just fascinating how people can rationalize something none of us have any idea. Yeah, whether, like how you kind of come to terms with existence and the world around you. Like, it's just fascinating to see how different cultures do that.
Yeah, and like what you said earlier about the you get just to hear the one-sided view of the greatest hits or whatever. Like, that's why I bounce off of that Legends of the Jews so much, because it is so fascinating. The amount of hoops that they introduce into their stories to justify what these characters do is oftentimes amazing.
Yeah, and that's what I've really been enjoying. A lot of the Genesis series is the back and forths between the Bible and the book, The Legends of the Jews, and the explanation. Like, I feel like they both really, like, there's a good vibe between both of them. They feed well off each other.
Yeah, and then like I'm obsessed with Gnosticism, so I get to like bounce those stories up against those stories too. And I'm just like, I'm fascinated by it. And one kid left a review once. I don't know I can't remember how long ago it was, but he was just like, you have the calling to be a preacher. And I'm like I've said some pretty despicable things about the God of the Bible. Like, I'm not sure that's true. But yeah, I'm just drawn to those stories, especially the Old Testament specifically. I don't know what it is. It's just I've always been fascinated with it.
Oh yeah, the old like fire and brimstone, that's the R-rated version of God, kind of like compared to like the New Testament. And
yeah, the like the Tower of Babel, like those were all fascinating episodes.
That was amazing.
Yeah,
learning like that, and oh my god.
And like all the Tammuz and the Nimrod stuff, like, oh my, I could just go on forever about that stuff now.
Oh, let me tell you, every time you mention, what was it, Adam's famous underpants, like, that makes me laugh every time. It's just like, it's such a straightforward way of trying to explain something that most people probably wouldn't, like, I don't know what that is, I'll just keep reading and move on.
Yeah, so in some of the Jewish stories, one of the first thing God does is he crafts these. They call, the technical term for them, I think, is a luminous garment for Adam and for Eve. And I kind of been like tracking this wrong son, wrong blessing kind of theme that's been in the Genesis episodes, and so I thought it'd be interesting to look at like what happened to these underpants through history. And so I kind of the blessings, the wrong son blessings, and then there's also a thing with wrong son curses, and then along with that, there's also a trail of this magic underpants business. And I just find this shit fascinating, and I finally sat down to start trying to kind of like to map it out, because we're creeping up on Jacob and Esau, and that's like the classic wrong son blessing thing. So yeah, I just find that shit fascinating. That the magic underpants thing is amazing. It is amazing because, like, it travels pretty much in a straight line until Noah, and then Ham, after he gets cursed, or after Canaan gets cursed, Ham steals the underpants, and then it travels in Ham's line, who's the cursed line as well, until Nimrod gets it. And well, that's why he's the great hunter, is because he's got these fucking divine underwear or whatever, and you're just like, you wrap your head around it. And then like one of the stories is that Esau winds up killing Nimrod, and the first thing he does is take the underpants off of Nimrod, and you're just like, what? It's just
that's a weird, like you're not taking gold teeth and watches, you're going for the underpants. But
yeah, right.
it's one of those things, like there's so many like off the wall things, especially in the Old Testament, that you just never hear about. like especially in organized religion, that's a fine example of one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I post the shows on Sundays. It's just like a
Oh
little
yeah,
sermon for everybody. So, okay. So I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
What's the what? Your avatar is like a Gundam wing, right?
Yeah, it's from the anime series Gundam. I've been a fan of it since I was a kid.
Okay, and that's essentially a giant robot story, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It was like that like early anime push where it was like the big robot kind of thing. I think the first series was like in the 60s, and then from there on.
Okay, so how big of a robot is it? Like, is it like a Transformer size robot, or like a?
I would say usually in the series, the chess piece, like if you're looking at the whole thing, that a person would probably be about from the bottom of the chest up probably to like the middle of the chest. Like I would say maybe like 20 to 50 feet tall, depending on like the show and all that.
So it's like a cockpit, like a guy sitting. It's not like a
pretty
power
much
armor or something. Okay.
Yeah, like in the original series, they had like original like Mobile Suit Gundam series that came out in the 60s. The way that it worked is it wasn't even like one just like humanoid robot. It was in pieces, and the pilot would come out in like a jet fighter that would transform like into the chess piece, and then the other ones would connect. And they kind of went away with that with some of the other ones.
Oh, so it's like kind of like a Voltron sort of thing.
Yeah, kind of like that.
I see.
But a lot of the stories I really enjoy because a lot of the stories are very like it's always about a conflict, and of course it's always about a war, but the way the stories flow is the point is always evil is a matter of perspective.
I see.
Yeah, so like allegiances will constantly fluctuate throughout the entire series. A person that was the bad guy in the beginning is now the good guy, and it really helped. Like at a young age, like really helped kind of like teach me like things aren't just black and white. There's more to the story. Yeah.
So when I did the 9/11 episodes, like I kind of tried to explain that, like geopolitics is shifting constantly, and because we supported the Mujahideen when the Soviet Union were our enemies, and then after that, the Mujahideen obviously became bad guys, and so like you can show all the pictures you want of like Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein or whatever, but that was the way it was at the time, So that's interesting that, like this long form, super duper long cartoon or anime kind of has those elements in it.
Oh yeah. I think the Middle East is a perfect example of that kind of like shifting allegiances, like from day to day, from decade to decade. Like, because I mean, during the 80s during the 80s when the Soviet Union was in Afghanistan, what we were training, what was it, the Taliban at the time, like giving them like surface to air missiles to shoot down the choppers and whatnot, and it just blows my mind that like a decade later.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect way to look at it because it's like a long game, right? But things change so fast there that it's like you can kind of track it, just like that, Donald Rumsfeld hanging out with Saddam Hussein, or us giving rocket launchers to the Taliban or whatever. It actually didn't happen so long ago, and things shifted so, the polarity shifted so fast. Like you could still kind of track it, and I think that's important. When people talk about politics, to keep that kind of stuff in perspective, I guess.
Well, it makes it so easy to kind of manipulate the narrative because, I mean, the allegiances are switching so much. I mean, for instance, and I normally don't do this, but I got into a back and forth with some guy on Twitter because he posted something about the worst thing we ever did was take Saddam out of power. And I'm like, you do realize people like Saddam and Gaddafi were trained by former SS, like after World War II, right? Like they.
Yeah, man. There was the Ba'athist Party has deep roots with the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Yeah, and don't forget, like, he used to fucking put people in fucking wood chippers and stuff. Like, he wasn't a good guy.
Oh yeah, just like weird dictatorship.
Yeah, but I'm familiar with that story. The line of thinking, the line that guy's line of thinking was that that region needed a strong man, and he was the guy that was there keeping everybody in line. Besides like kicking off a bunch of crazy wars and
to that point, I agree. Like as soon as he fell, then like it was just that void, and everyone just rushed in to get their piece of it.
Hey guys, I'm Abby.
And I'm Shauna, and we're the host of a podcast called Anxious and Afraid.
Do you love deep dives into true crime,
the paranormal,
strange history,
conspiracies? Well, so do we, and each week we take turns surprising each other with whatever anxiety-inducing subject we are obsessed with that week.
Tune in each week to hear Shauna mispronounce words.
The guys on the lookout apparently asked for binoculars. Did I say that right?
So the photos showed him and his colleague entertaining... Wait, am I saying it wrong? Yes. And listen in as Abby constantly asks too many questions.
I was about to ask you a lot of questions, and I'm glad that you interrupted me. Continue.
I would have told you to shut up.
I don't know.
I don't know what
Stop
I'm trying
quizzing
to
me.
do.
Okay, I did enough research. Let me just tell the damn story.
Jesus. Continue. Episodes drop every Tuesday, available wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also find us at our website, anxiousandafraid.com.
We're always looking for new friends, so don't forget to rate and subscribe.
So this month on the Fulgar Correspondentia, just a fancy word for the mailing list. Since we're heading into the fourth quarter of our Genesis series, there's a little brief Genesis timeline, according to me, that's up there. Also, since we are going to be getting into Jacob and Esau, I finally sat down and started to work on a map of the wrong son, the wrong blessing idea that we've been running into pretty much this whole Genesis thing. Sat down and worked out some pretty cool details, so I think it's pretty cool. Also, as always, you can look at my latest up-to-date version of the tarot cards that I'm designing. All that if you just sign into the mailing list, all that bonus stuff. But the Fellowcraft episode on the Patreon and Subscribe Star this month, we're starting to look at and dissect the work of Milton William Cooper in an episode entitled The UFO Conspiracy Part 1.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Yeah, so I was a huge giant robot guy when I was a kid. I had I don't know if you remember the Shogun Warriors.
If I saw it, I'd probably remember. Let me look up.
Yeah. So I grew up as a comic book guy. My old man was a comic book guy, so I got to read everything he was buying. And Marvel licensed these Shogun Warrior giant robots. I just remember just rereading those comic books over and over again. And eventually they did a toy line, and these fucking things were like 3 feet high, and they're fucking like fist rockets shot out and everything. They were really cool.
Look at these things. Yeah, this is like the like when that that wave of like big robot anime like hit like the States, like when it was like Pacific Rim and like Gundam, and I think Evangelion came out in like the 90s, but like that whole genre.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
this is wild.
And then there was also another, like one of the first anime, as far as I know, that ever came stateside was called Star Blazers. Now that didn't have a giant robot, but it was built. The spaceship was built around the sunken skeleton of the Japanese warship, the Yamamoto, and they built this giant cannon in the belly of it. It was called like the wave gun or something, and every episode they would find a reason to shoot this fucking thing off, and it's pretty fantastic.
They actually did a remake of that not too long ago. I watched the remake, and it was pretty good. And yeah, it was just pretty much the space battleship that looked like an old school World War II Japanese warship with this massive cannon. It was wild. I liked that. I really enjoyed that one.
Was it live action, or did they do a movie of it?
I think they did a live action, but the most recent one was just an anime. It was a space battleship. Was it Yamamoto?
Yamamoto, yeah.
It came out like 2 or 3 years ago.
And then when they edited it and shifted it around for Americans, they called it Star Blazing, and they had this retarded song. It was like Star Blazing Across the Universe or something like that.
Oh yeah. Anime intros like early on were pretty you had to really like the anime to stick with it. Even then, you probably, if you had it on like tape or DVD, you probably skipped it.
Yeah, right. And then when I was in middle school, they were playing Robotech.
Robotech.
The first one, I can't remember, with Rick Hunter and the SDF one. And I got super into that. The idea of the super dimensional fortress was my jam back then. I was like, wait, it didn't implode. It actually traveled to another fucking dimension. It's crazy. So are you familiar with that Robotech?
I never watched it growing up, but I've gotten here over the past couple of weeks since I've kind of pretty much burnt out everything on Netflix. I've started to get I was like, well, let me start watching Robotech, and I love that art style, like that alone, like that old like 80s like into the 90s like anime art style is it's so smooth. It's just so just like it really feels good to look at.
Yeah, and then like it looks so alien compared to what we watch nowadays because it's all done by computer. Like, it's got a soul because a bunch of dudes hunched over a fucking drawing board actually fucking drew those lines out. Like, it's amazing.
Well, that's what I think they did, kind of, with the most recent Dragon Ball Z movie it was like the Broly movie that came out. I think it was last year, but the art style for that was a little bit more traditional than some of like today's like computer generated, and it looked really nice too.
Yeah, I guess it's not to say that the computer generated stuff looks bad. It's just, I'm a little bit older, so grew up watching like the hand drawn stuff. It's like if you go back and watch, not that I'm a giant Disney fan, but if you go back to watch like Fantasia or like Snow White or Cinderella, and you see like those beautifully like hand done rotoscopes of them like dancing around and stuff, you're just like, wow, like fucking people did this with their hands, So
yeah, and that's the best part about it. Like, you can appreciate the craft. I think that's what makes it so like just feel good is seeing like the fight scenes and like it just, you can see the care and you can see the hard work that goes into it. Not to say that like nowadays, like the way anime is done, that it's not difficult or it's not an art style, but it just feels like that old school, like just hold it in your hands kind of feel.
Yeah. It's like the difference between like an e-comic book on your fucking Kindle or like actually holding it in your hands or something like that. Maybe there's like a correlation. Did you see the live action Captain Harlock?
No, I didn't see that one. I have to check and see. There's.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I have to look and see because there's a lot of stuff I've been trying to get into. I tried to watch I'm gonna butcher it, and there's probably some people that are gonna freak out. Evangelion or Evangelion. I don't know. I always forget how to say it. I tried so hard because I grew up watching Gundam, and there's always been like this, not like a rift, but always like this friendly, like I guess like rivalry you would say, like between like Gundam and that series. Like fans of one or the other are always like, well, this one's better, or that one's better. This one was the one that kind of made like big robots like like a staple like in the West. And I tried watching it, but it was just like I think I got like halfway into it, and it just got like so like LSD trip. Like it was just so weird. I was like, I can't. I was trying. I'm like watching episodes and then going back and watching them again and like rewinding scenes 2 and 3 times. Like I don't know. I was like, I'll take your word for it. Maybe it's just not my cup of tea. I'm sure the art style is amazing. The plot's awesome. I was like, I'll give it that.
Yeah, you get like this, when I was a kid, you either watched Transformers or you watched the GoBots. You didn't watch fucking Bull, So, I kind of identify with that. The thing that I think is interesting about, I have never even watched one episode. So if you butchered it, I'm gonna fuck it up. Evangelion is
there. You go. You probably have it right.
There's an angel aspect to that, right? Or some kind of like
there is the monster. It's kind of like Pacific Rim in the idea that these mechs, so to speak, and are kind of not really mechs, but kind of mechs, were created to fight like monsters that pretty much came from a different dimension. But they called them angels.
Yeah.
So it kind of it's kind of like shares its roots with like the Pacific Rim series, like genre.
Yeah, that's cool. I was like looking, and some of the characters' names are actually directly references to angels and demons. So I was like, well, that's super interesting, but I had to stay away from it because one of the characters in my books is a dude that wears an angelic power armor. So I have to kind of sequester myself from these kind of things because I don't want to like accidentally steal something. Does it make sense?
Yeah, like get inspired by something and like it'll be in the back of your mind and you don't really think about it like when you're trying to like develop the character or go through like the scene.
So when I'm writing or working on something, like I try to make sure that I stay away from media or entertainment that might pertain to that. Like I still haven't watched that Henry Rollins movie, He Never Died, because it has to do with Cain, and like my whole last graphic novel was all about Cain, and I was just like, and my Cain never died either. So I was like, I have to stay the fuck away from this movie because I don't want to.
But I love that story too, like the whole story of Cain, like as just constantly walking the earth and being a pivotal, like so like a key player in like all of like the world major events.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I really had fun doing that, and I got to work like just a bunch of like crazy like astrological events, and I got to work in the procession of the ages, and I really just I kind of went a little bit crazy with it. I was like writing songs for it and stuff, and I'm like, I don't have a musical bone in my body. What the fuck am I doing? But I kind of lost myself in that project.
Hey, when you dive into it, go 100%. I hear that.
Yeah, go big or go home.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, man. Well, you talked about Pacific Rim. Are you a fan of
that one? The only interaction I've had with that whole series was the movies that recently came out, which is probably going to drive people nuts. I know there's a long running history. I think I like the whole idea, like like big robots fighting like intergalactic or interdimensional monsters. Like it's like so Lovecraftian. I love that that whole thing.
Yeah. So I'm a big Guillermo del Toro fan, except for the whole fish fucking movie. I didn't like that one.
That was kind of weird. I didn't finish that one.
I'm like, is she giving that fish a hand job? What the fuck is going on? But he did that first movie, and I thought it was awesome. I went to it, and I was like, there's no way he got a big enough budget to pull this off. And then, like, literally everything I wanted to see happened before the credits. So I was like, what?
Mhm.
I was in. And then when I heard that they didn't hire him to do the second one, I was like, well, I don't even want to watch this fucking one. So, but yeah, I really like that first one. Now that we're talking about it, I feel like I got to dig it up and watch it tonight.
Well, I kind of had that same like feeling of excitement when Ready Player One came out in theaters because there was a Gundam in that movie.
Oh, right.
And that was
cool.
Yeah, at the end of it, spoiler alert. Towards the end of it, there's a Gundam that appears, and it's amazing because for people like in the West that are big fans of that whole genre, like I think they attempted to do a live action almost about 20 years ago, and of course, like Hollywood, like adaptation of anything, there's always liberty's sake, and with anime, it just always goes south, and it was a hot mess. So I knew like when because I didn't know anything about the original story, like this whole when it came out, I was like, oh, what's this all about? And then there was a Gundam in it. And I was like, this is the only time I guarantee in my lifetime I'm going to see a Gundam on like on the big screen. Like I'm taking this opportunity. And the craziest thing was, for the most part, the theater's packed, and everyone was, for the most part, like pretty like average for like an audience watching a movie. But the scene when that Gundam appeared, like people started losing it and hooting and hollering, and I was just like, I'm not the only one. I thought it was just me.
That's a pretty awesome feeling, but that can also bite you on the ass too. Like, I grew up my whole life worshiping Star Wars movies, and nowadays I think the Star Wars movies are garbage, and everyone fucking likes Star Wars movies, and I'm just like, you people are fucking, you don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I get like,
yeah, see, I get that, and it's one of those things where you think of it, is it me, is it legitimately like what the storyline is? But I kind of feel the same way. It feels like a lot of stuff is forced with the most recent movies, like. To each their own. I enjoyed Mandalorian more than I enjoyed.
Oh yeah. That was really good. I was like, why don't they put Jon Favreau in charge of this fucking mess? Like,
well, I just love the fact that they went with the puppets for like, rather than going like the typical like, let's just do like the big budget like graphics and whatnot.
Yeah. So what else are you watching? You said that you burned out your.
Watched The Witcher like 5 times. That was amazing.
I got a listener who's begging me to watch The Witcher, and I'm like, I can't stand that. I can't stand that actor, though. I don't know if I could get over.
What, Henry Cavill?
Yeah, I don't know if I can get over what he did to Superman. Like every time I look.
No,
at
I
him,
get
I'm
that.
Like,
I get that. Let me tell you, the way I will say for The Witcher, I feel like this is the first time that like Hollywood or like they haven't corrupted it too much.
Yeah,
like it feel he like you, if you've ever read the books or played the games, like he's that character. Like it's just like one of those people, like that's the role they were supposed to play.
All right. Well, you're not the only person that's telling me that kind of stuff, so maybe I'll give it a spin. I just tried to watch that. Netflix has this 3-part Dracula series on, and
the one that just came out.
Yeah, and I guess the guy or one of the dudes that I don't know if it was Gaddis or the other guy or whatever, but one of the dudes that was responsible for the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock is responsible for it. And they totally fucked me over because the first episode was so good. And then it just turns into a stupid, flaming pile of shit by the end of it. I was like, after I watched the first one, I actually posted a recommendation. I'm like, hey, if anyone's looking for something to watch, this Dracula on Netflix is great. And then like 2 hours later, I'm like, abort.
Yeah,
like,
I lied.
I'm so sorry for that. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I haven't gotten to that one yet. So
yeah,
I might take a look at it, but I've been hit and miss. Like I watched The Witcher. Oddly enough, I've been like watching the shit out of Outlander on Netflix. Okay. Outlander is like if a bunch of guys got together and said, we are going to make the most cliche like erotic women's like fantasy novel. And just like what the guys would say that like is just over the top, like every plot line you could possibly think of is just in this show. It's good, like it's a really good, like it's an epic love story. It's about this woman who like goes through these stones in Scotland 200 years from like I think she was the World War II had just ended, and she goes through these stones and ends up in like this like the mid 1700s, like when Scotland was warring with England, like the fall of like the Highlanders around that time. And it's just this story where she falls in love with this guy who's a part of this clan, and just she goes through all these pivotal points in history. It's just wild, but it's so cliche to like the woman's like the love story, like the erotic novel or whatever. And it was kind of funny because I had like this innate ability. I can only do it when I'm high. I had this innate ability to just predict, like from plot line to plot line for 3 seasons, exactly what was going to happen, like almost episode to episode, because it was just so, it was like so predictable. And like one of the episodes was like they set it up to choose from like 4 or 5 different ways that it could go. It's pretty interesting, but it's kind of it'll make you laugh when you get through it.
Yeah, I might check it out. But right now, my wife has discovered Orange is the New Black, so that pretty much means that I have to sit through Orange is the New Black.
No, I hear that. I did the same. My wife was obsessed with Orange is the New Black, and it was. I mean,
no,
I wouldn't watch it just me, but like it grew on me. I guess would be the best thing.
Yeah, it's fun. The writing is really good, and a lot of the character development is really good. Okay, so one last thing. Did you check out the or were you interested in the Lost in Space reboot?
See, I've never seen it, so I wouldn't know if it was like true to source or if it was like a complete like cluster. But they're on season 2 now, right? Like season 2 just came out.
Yeah, it just came out. That's
probably one I'm going to check out.
I had a hard time getting through the first season. I think the second season is way better. I would just breeze through that like almost in a weekend. So, but I used to love that show. I used to catch that show in the reruns when it was in black and white, in the 80s. So I was like familiar with it, and it's just like everything else nowadays. It's kind of the same, but it's a real different, but it's way more feasible the way that they kind of set it up. So, but yeah, so it's like every episode they get themselves in this crazy impossible jam, and then they wind up getting themselves out of it with like their pluckiness and their ingenuity and stuff. And the acting's really good. So, maybe I should rewatch that first.
I'm always down for I'm always down for a space drama. It sounds interesting enough. Like, yeah, like what the heck am I watching? I think I'm watching Meat Eater right now, like that Netflix show with that guy that goes around like the world like hunting with like different celebrities and whatnot. So I'm jonesing for something to really get into.
Yeah, man, that sounds good. Meat Eater, geez. My wife's also obsessed with Gordon Ramsay cooking shows, and that season's coming up where it's like 4 nights a week is going to be Gordon Ramsay shows. So I'm really looking forward to that as well.
I love his attitude. I got so burnt out on Gordon Ramsay. Like early on, like the Hell's Kitchen, and then he had that show that was on BBC. Like I couldn't get enough of it, and then it was just like he's in every show. I'm like, okay,
yeah, you're just like, holy shit! Now he's on the fucking Nat Geo. The Natural Geographics. He's got his fucking.
Yeah, he's doing like some weird, like survivalist, like I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, it's like who was the famous chef that just killed himself that would travel to different.
Oh, Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, now that Anthony Bourdain's dead, Gordon Ramsay's like stealing his gimmick. He's like,
yeah, like they got together. Like, we need someone to fill the shoes of the traveling. Like yeah, we'll get. Like we think he's stable enough. He's married with kids. Well,
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is like, well, it's not like he's going to say no to a television show. He's got like 5 of them. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I think I'm going to pull the plug on this unless you have anything else.
No, the only thing I was going to ask is, what are your thoughts on like the the Lovecraft genre, like the whole like mythos, like Cthulhu and Azathoth, like all that story.
Well, I gotta tell you that I fucking love H.P. Lovecraft. Like, I don't think there's been a writer as influential as him ever, like in the history of the world. I think he is the most influential writer. I mean, you get into like the Stephen Kings and maybe the Edgar Allan Poes and maybe the detective novel, kind of like the Sherlock Holmes kind of stuff. But as far as the stuff that I hold dear, it doesn't get any better. If you're asking me if I think that there's like, because in the occult world, there's a lot of people talking about how real it was.
Oh yeah, like there's a legit, was it the Esoteric Order of Dagon or something? There's like a legit, like real life, like group.
Yeah, and like there are people that will argue with you until they're blue in the face about how the Necronomicon's like a real fucking thing, and you know H.P. Lovecraft was like in on it, and he just like skewed it enough to, you know, make it entertaining or something. And I don't
like he was just trying to prepare people for
like he's like like he was like a prophet of Cthulhu or something like that. I don't buy that at all. Like I think it's really compelling.
He's just
really
an amazing
weird
storyteller.
Yeah, dude. And it's not like, even the stories, it's not the stories. I mean, the stories are great, but it's the mood that he's able to.
Oh yeah, the whole vibe of the whole vibe of like giving you just enough to keep you interested, but like the real fear is what he's not saying.
Yeah, so
the real fear is like what's being hidden,
or just like hidden, like obscured. Like there's this whole bit in which one was it? Shadow over Innsmouth. It's where this guy is. Okay, so it's like another fucking a fish story, right? So in Shadow over Innsmouth, this guy is going to Innsmouth, and he's talking and he's describing like how the terrain around him is getting more and more degenerated as he gets closer to this Innsmouth town, and just the way I mean, it sounds boring. The guy's like in a cabbage or a carriage, or he's in a train, or I can't, a horse and buggy. I can't remember what he's riding in, but he explains about like when, you know, he's in like the farmlands, how everything's like green and alive, and as he gets closer and closer to this town, everything is like dying and decaying, and instead of becoming like you know, ancient and alive, it's like ancient and gross, you know, or like whatever. And it's just like the journey it takes, and he does it so quickly. It's amazing. And then like you get into the stuff about how he's always driving his characters nuts and all this, and it's just I mean, that stuff is just brilliant. Like it's all just great. I think that he gets a bad rap because of his racism, and to that I just say, you know, you just have to fucking roll with it, because if you don't give H.P. Lovecraft a pass, then how the fuck are you going to give, you know, Mel Brooks a pass when you watch fucking Blazing Saddles or, you know, anything like that? You know, you just have to understand, like, not only was he a product of his time, he was actually a product of before his time. Like, his views were weird even when he was around. So, you know, I really do give him I don't want to say I give him a pass, but I put it in the context. You know, he was.
You have to separate the man from his work, because I mean that's exactly. He really paved the way for science fiction. Like he is the father of like the detective stories, Stephen King, like all that. Like I don't in my mind personally, I don't think it would exist in the way that it does, or those people would have been able to create the works that they've created without like him laying the groundwork for that kind of like that storytelling.
Yeah, it's like literally every horror movie is every horror, you know, any popular like Pacific Rim, like you already mentioned, you know, is Cthulhu mythos, you know, Hellboy, whichever one you watch has the Cthulhu mythos in it. Fucking Alien, any kind of space horror movie is got that touch of cosmic terror, you know.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, it's got that little seasoning of it. I think the best example is I don't know if anyone here, like in the recent generation, has seen it, because I think it came out like 15 years ago or so. Cloverfield, the movie Cloverfield, I think was better Lovecraft and like styled movies, because for the entire time they refused to show you what it looked like. For the you get an arm, or you get a leg, or you get like this quick shadow. The camera was going all over the place. And I know it drove a lot of people nuts, but it was just like that uneasiness, like that. It makes you physically uneasy to watch. Like that's inspired by it perfectly.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even kind of go as far as I know, like Jaws. Like Bruce the shark was the reason we don't see the shark very often, because the shark puppet or robot was all fucked up. But it's like it's the same thing. Like it's held obscure with you only seeing like bits and pieces of it until the end, and you're just like, oh shit, like that's a big fucking shark,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's like I don't know if Steven Spielberg would say that H.P. Lovecraft was an influence on Jaws, but you can like I said, I think that you could see it everywhere. And I'll just, if I'm working in my studio, like I'll just go and put an audiobook of H.P. Lovecraft and just fucking like just zone out and just listen to those old stories.
Oh yeah, I'll do it all the time while I'm at work. I love it. My favorite one is and I know there's two different titles for it, but From Beyond is probably my favorite. The one about the crazy scientist that creates the machine that can like pierce the veil into the next dimension.
Okay.
That one's probably like one of my favorite ones of all time.
Yeah, I have a couple favorites. I like the Cthulhu. I certainly like the Cthulhu. I like the there's one called Whisperers in the Darkness that's really good. And the Shadow over Innsmouth. I think those are my three. But I mean, he did some weird stuff too, because he did like a lot of like dream, like Psychonaut kind of stuff, like the Silver Key, and like I don't put that in the same like realm with the Cthulhu stories. And then he also kind of did like more science fiction-y stuff rather than the cosmic horror stuff. So I don't know how the official canon works. And then after he died, like so many people were able to use his work to like make their own shit, because he encouraged that, which I think is admirable, right? But but then you have to kind of look at it and you're like, I don't know what the official canon to any of this stuff is. Going back to my Puritan love for only the original Star Wars, I guess I'm kind of like that with a lot of stuff. Like I wouldn't pick up like an August Derleth Cthulhu story. I think I'd rather just stick to the H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's the thing. Like over the years, exactly. I guess everyone has kind of put their own spin on it. They made the famous. I think it was part of the board games that they do, the Call of Cthulhu board game. Like it's gotten so like everyone's taken their piece of it and added to it that it's hard to really tell exactly what the canon storyline or like what the canon story of the whole piece is.
Yeah, so it's like you kind of got to put some of that stuff in like a fan fiction sort of thing, where it's like, yeah, it's fun, but you have to kind of like annex it in your brain when you're sitting around thinking about that stuff. But yeah, totally. I don't think that H.P. Lovecraft was a prophet of the coming age of Cthulhu or anything like this. And I think that I know that there is a published Necronomicon. You used to be able to buy it out of the back of Heavy Metal magazine. When I was growing up, like they had like a little order form you could like cut out of it and like send it in.
Yeah, I remember that.
In Marvel Epic and stuff. But I think that was just, that's just marketing. That's just marketing stuff, I think, for the most part.
Well, I think it ended up being just a bunch of Lovecraft stories anyway. Like if you went in, but I think of now, like if you go and you search Necronomicon, it's like here's a Necronomicon, but it's like Shadow over Innsmouth, Call of Cthulhu. Like it's just a collection of those stories.
That's cool. At least someone didn't try to like recreate the writings of the mad Arab Alhazarad or whatever. But yeah, man, I love Abdul Alhazarad. But yeah, I love all that shit. Cool. All right, man. You got anything else?
No, that was it. I mean, just keep doing what you're doing, man. I really enjoy I'll eat up like every single episode. It's been really fun to just dive into all these things that like I was never exposed to throughout my childhood.
Well,
And
hey,
like, you know,
I was just going to say thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I hope that this has been fun. I'm actually going to wind up just posting it tomorrow. So it'll be out there if you want to listen to it.
awesome.
But yeah, this is just a way to like thank you guys. That's been, you know, with the support and everything. Like without you guys, you know, it's possible that, you know, I wouldn't be able to do this stuff. And, you know, just as a way to like thank you, like sincerely, and to get to know you guys, you know, like I can't phone call every listener and talk to them. So I thought that you guys would be a cool kind of like intersection. Like I could talk to these guys and, you know, ask them like, what kind of episodes do you like the best? Like, do you have any, I didn't ask you this, like, do you have any criticisms? Is there stuff that you'd like to see me not do or stuff you'd like to see me do more or better?
Honestly, no. Like I know you've got probably some. I think you've mentioned it before some negative reviews about how you run the podcast. Like I really enjoy like the no bullshit, like not like scripted and like fake voiced, like just a straightforward deliver of the information. Like that crassness, like that. It's real. You don't see that, especially with a lot of other podcasts. It's pretty much like, and they're great. It's not saying anything against any of the other podcasts, but it feels very like personal and real and raw. And I think that's like, given the topics, I think it goes really well.
Yeah, like the thing, like I kind of changed the intro nowadays, but like the way that I always imagined it was, you know, the party's over and there's still just a few weird people that are still up drinking. You know, everyone else has been going to bed. So I tried to like make it, you know, authentic and real and like because I've been in situations where you're just like, you stay up talking to this weird motherfucker you just met till 4:00 in the morning and you guys cover some crazy shit. That's kind of the way that I always wanted the podcast to kind of be like. And,
yeah, it's definitely got that vibe, like that whole like everyone's passed out and we're gonna talk about some weird shit that they probably.
That's right. Now it's time to get real. Yeah. Well, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate your support. And thank you for taking your time. And if you want, I'll be in touch towards the end of this month and we could schedule something for next month if you want.
Yeah, that sounds great. I appreciate you reaching out and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, man. Take it easy and enjoy your weekend.
All right. You too.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.